Besides Sunset School, will you tell me about going to Carmel High School? Your time at
I
Carmel
went
High?
only for a very short time. I went to Monterey High School before Carmel was built.
Okay.
I went for a very short time to Carmel High School. My sister went there. But because mother, I was going to get into that, to make ends meet, she would usually rent our home. And we had been there in the summer, but she liked the ice skating rink and she liked Yosemite. And we would drive up and rent a house in Yosemite. And she often tried to find someone with a teaching credential maybe to join us or something of the kind. But my education was very, very scant at that point. Uh, I usually left school at Christmas and didn't come back. And so in order to be eligible to go to university, which I wanted and my mother wanted, although I think she thought of Mills or one of the girls' institutions, I went to Douglas School, which was the predecessor of the Robert Louis Stevenson schools, and a very horsey place. Mrs. Douglas said she was going to wear out 3 more horses before she died, and we all of us rode and even played polo and but equitation and all the rest of it. But she also said to my mother when she came to be interviewed, "Yes, we will take Charlotte, but only if she stays past Christmas," because mother always took us out of school at Christmas time and we didn't come back. And that was when the first ski place they had in California was there at Badger Pass. And they had a sled that was hauled up the hill with a tractor motor. And I learned to ski there and went on and became a junior champion of California, actually, and continued my skiing. When I actually got into Stanford, mother was absolutely stunned. She couldn't believe it. But I did rather well in the intelligence tests. Of course, the war was going on, and amongst other things, I worked in the local hospital, and when I was here at home, I worked in the canneries over the hill. But when I was there at Stanford, I was president of the ski club, and we did ski in competition. We did have a team that went around, and so that was one of my big, how shall I say, enthusiasms for a long, long time. But I was always in summer schools. I mean, the Collège International de Cannes. Oh, when I first went to Europe, I went to the Sorbonne for a while. And then I've been in sessions in Heidelberg and other places. But I didn't want an interpreter. I wanted to be able to speak with the people. And my German still has a Salzburgian or Austrian tang to it. So, blah, 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 blah. Things that I have done.
After Stanford and after your education,
But
tell me about. Did you come back to Carmel? Or?
no, I did it after. I went to New York to see ski friends and others and stayed there for a while. And after that, I went to Europe before finishing at Stanford, which was probably quite naughty. And this was shortly after the war, when there was still rationing of bread and when you had to have a visa to go from one country to the other. But that's when I went to the Sorbonne and so on. I usually discovered the cheapest way you could live would be, if you could get in, to enroll somewhere. Because you got into the opera, you got on the streetcars, you got all kinds of things as a student that you wouldn't. And all those years I had a fixed income of $40 a month, which was not very much. But you learn to appreciate how an apple tastes and how good an egg is, and all those things. And you also learn not to be afraid. You're not going to starve. You're going to manage. Yeah. Oh, and going over on the America, it was exceedingly stormy. And I was down in the the least expensive quarters possible. But I could play bridge, and so they found out about me, and because there was nobody else, they had me up playing bridge with some rather well-to-do business people, and I ended up later on staying with some of those people in Zurich and so on. My mother was not well. She had rheumatoid arthritis very badly, but she wanted to come to Europe, and she kept insisting I stay there. I was her excuse to come, and she finally did manage it. And but she was quite ill, and she was one of the very first ones to have cortisone, and that I was up to me to give her the shots and so on. They didn't know very much about it. She actually had a cerebral hemorrhage and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I realized that to support her and so on, I'd have to do something. My sister took the car and went off to Spain. She was a little bit spoiled. But that's when I joined the military, the special services. And I was in Europe for 5 years, you know. And, oh, but before that, before Mother came, when I was staying with the friends in Zurich, I persuaded a professor at the University of Zurich to help me get in, because it's very hard to get into a European university unless you have at least 4 years, and I hadn't completed my Stanford education. But I did get in and spent 2.5 years studying comparative literature, and really enjoyed that experience. And when I got back home, did go back to Stanford. And it took more than 1 quarter, and I was much older than anybody. They didn't want me in the dorms. I had to find private residency. But I do have my degree. So after the 2.5 years toward my doctorate.